Well, hey everybody, we're back and we're about to bring on Boe Young and Major General Garret Yee for a very interesting conversation. Both brilliant gentlemen and both long-serving military leaders. Turn it back over to our good friend, Major General Boe Young.
Hey, thanks, David. Garret, you with us?
I'm here, but it's not letting me start my video. Let me see, I got a link now. Oh, here we go. All right. Hey, so Bo, you wouldn't believe this, so I'm in Tampa yesterday morning running along, the Bayshore area, and I run into Louis Vuitton, Major General Louis Vuitton, of all people, right? He moved to Tampa. And so we caught up for a moment, and he mentioned this series. And he said, I think I saw you and Bo doing something this week. And so, how about that? Great leader.
Yeah, he mentored both of us, and I don't know about you, but he's still a lot faster than I am when it comes to running. So he has smoked me on more than one PT test, that's for sure.
And the guy didn't age a bit, man. I tell you what, so it's wonderful seeing a mentor of ours. And so I thought I'd just bring that up at the very beginning because, that was the first thing that came out of his mouth when I talked to him yesterday morning.
Good.
I see you and Bo doing something.
Yeah, good to see that we have some reach there. So that's great. Well, Garret, thanks so much for being here. As the audience can tell, Garret and I are friends. Go back, served together back when I was in uniform. And Garret is the assistant to the director of the Defense Information Systems Agency, otherwise known as DISA. And prior to this, he served as the deputy Army G6 CIO. He has commanded in combat and is a veteran of both Iraq and Afghanistan campaigns. And Garret, we're just delighted to have you join us here today and share a little bit about what you're doing and what your agency is doing.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So, I think DISA is one of those places that everybody's heard of, but very few people know what they do. So maybe we could start with what does DISA do? Keep it pretty high level, and how does it do it?
Yeah, so thanks, Bo. We are very much like a service provider for a telecom, right? So we provide the infrastructure for telecom services for the DoD. We run the undersea cables, from CONUS US to overseas. We run the satellite systems for the military SATCOM. We provide capabilities forward to the edge in combat. We have a number of mission command systems that we support the warfighter with, that we provide and support. We support the White House Communications. The White House Communications Agency is part of DISA. When the president steps off a plane and stands in front of a podium, that's a DISA capability and DISA personnel that travel with him to ensure that he has secure, reliable communications. We run the infrastructure and the communications for the Pentagon, for the SecDef, for the chairman. So all the way from the president through the Pentagon to the forward edges to the battlefield, we provide that communications infrastructure securely and reliably for the Defense Department. In a nutshell, we're about 19,000 military, civilian, and contract personnel worldwide. We have a presence in 42 countries. Our headquarters is at Fort Meade, Maryland, but we have field commands and field offices co-located with all of the combatant commands. And so it's a busy operation. And I'll stop there.
Yeah. Well, when part of your mission set is White House communications, that's pretty much a no-fail kind of operation. So really, I think it's good to start there and let people really understand the scope, scale, and the importance of what you do. Given that your mission set is so critical and so broad, how does DISA think about the threat? And in particular, what's the level of cooperation, if any, at the service-specific cyber and intelligence agencies as it relates to that?
Hey, Bo, thanks for asking that question. So my boss, Lieutenant General Skinner, Air Force, 3-star, is dual-hatted as the DISA director and the commander of JFHU Doden, right? And so as the DISA director, he reports to the DoD CIO. And in that role, he's responsible for providing that network infrastructure and basic defense of that network infrastructure for about 70% of the Department of Defense networks, right? And his other hat as a commander of JFHU Doden, he works for General Nakasone at Cybercom. And so there's a separate parallel organization that he commands that works very synergistically with DISA. And the role of JFHU Doden is to command and control all of the military cyber assets for the Defense Department. So each of the services, Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, Navy, each have their own cyber forces. So Army Cyber Command for the Army, MAR-4 Cyber for the Marine Corps, Fleet Cyber for the Navy, AF Cyber for the Air Force, right? And those 4 plus several other cyber components all kind of funnel up through JFHU Doden and then reports to, Cyber Command, General Nakasone. So as threat intelligence comes through and actions are required to defend or to mitigate, that comes through JFHU Doden to the cyber components that I just mentioned, the services and the other agencies. So that is a C2 channel for defending the networks from the cyber side. We do a number of things on the DISA side as well, basic protect and defend, but the cybercom elements are really the ones that do the more robust cyber mission.
That's great. What are some of DISA's main strategic priorities?
Oh, well, thanks for asking. So, just this past month, actually last month, the beginning of October, we released, General Skinner released his 5 priorities. First is prioritize command and control. And what that means is whatever we can do to enable, JADC2, for example, is something that, is a priority for us. So all the underlying circuits, telecom support, cybersecurity support to enable C2. Without communications, you can't do C2. So number 1. Number 2 is drive force readiness through innovation. And that means for us working, very much so with our industry partners to see what's in the art of possible for us to do things, more optimally, more efficiently, in a way that helps us to move the ball forward. Third is leverage data as a center of gravity. And we've been talking data for a couple of years now, but really there are lots of different kinds of data that we use. So in our world, all that network data, all that cyber data, how can we use that data for, defending our networks? But there's also other data as well that we leverage, whether it be financial data or, maintenance data of systems, et cetera. So there's, a kind of a wide open area for us right now when it comes to data. The fourth is harmonizing cybersecurity and the user experience. It's that age-old, balance between, securing the network and operational capability, right? And General Skinner sometimes talks about, one of his colleagues who says, "Hey, it takes me 3 songs to log into my computer in the morning." As an example, right? Yeah, we can be secure, but you can't get nothing done. So what's the right balance? How do we get some harmony there? And then the fifth, is empowering the workforce. We're in the people business, but we're also in the IT business, but we got to do both. And so, the phrase that we often use is, mission first, people always. That's a very popular way of, I think, ensuring that we strike the right balance to ensure that the workforce has the tools they need to be able to do their jobs, at the same time, get the job done. In a nutshell, those are the 5, high-level priorities that we just released at the beginning of October.
A lot of the AFS audience is companies, medium and smaller size companies looking to try to figure out a way to do business with the DoD. I don't know, frankly, that DISA is a place that they think of right off the bat in terms of trying to enter as a place. I think a lot of it is more service specific because you hear about AFWorks and AAL and Naval X and places like that. Can you talk more in detail about the innovation priority or line of effort and what you all are doing there, both internally within DISA, I guess, as well as in terms of outreach to small businesses?
Yeah, so like any agency, federal agency, we have you know an office of small business, and we have small business targets that we are required to attain. And we just 2 weeks ago had our forecast to industry. That's our industry day, where we put out all of the known and anticipated contract opportunities over the next 18 to 24 months, many of which are, you know, absolutely open to small business or small business partnering with a larger organization to, bid on one of those projects eventually. We're about $11 billion organization, 11.9 billion. That's a fair amount of funds that come through us, primarily IT, cybersecurity type work. And the best way to work with us, number one, is if you're a small or medium-sized business, you know, come to our small business office and reach out to Carlene Campanos, who leads that office, and she will take you, or one of her staff members will take you through a little, you know, how to work with DISA 101 brief. One of the things that for a small business you need to keep in mind is whatever we do needs to have the potential to scale, right? During the pandemic, when we had to increase telework, we had to scale up to, 4 million end users for a capability, right? So can your business scale? Number one, right? And then number two, you need to be very, frank and honest with what the capability is. You don't want to get yourself in a position where you overpromise and you can't deliver for the first time out with the federal government, because that will hurt your chances of future business. So you want to make sure you step into this with eyes wide open in terms of what your capability is truly able to do. So that's very important. We do have an emerging tech directorate led by Steve Wallace, and he's our innovation scientist, and he has shepherded a few OTAs, other transaction authority efforts through successfully so far. And so we are also leveraging OTAs for that emerging tech world, in addition to our more traditional contracting vehicles.
How about inside DISA? So, I imagine that you're like everybody else, everybody's kind of fighting over the same type of quality labor pool, and obviously attracting and retaining high quality people, super important to your headquarters. Are you all doing anything that you would consider innovative inside the headquarters to try to support that?
Yeah, so maybe innovative to us, not to the industry, right? Outside of the federal government. And so, we now have a more practical telework policy that we didn't have before the pandemic. And then we are working on what a remote work policy looks like, right? So, we in practice have a few remote workers during the pandemic, but once we, transition, what does that remote policy really look like for us, right? And some companies are doing it very successfully, and we are looking at that very carefully, because for us, we're like everyone else in the fight for talent, especially cyber and IT, where we can't compete on price or can't compete on salary in some cases, but we can compete on mission. We have a fantastic mission that broad set of missions that you get to do things that you can't do anywhere else, which is kind of cool. So.
Yeah. The it's a bit off script here and topic, but you mentioned the pandemic, and it is fascinating that the shift, both in the private sector and in the government, to telework, and how that happened, and how it happened relatively seamlessly. There were news reports about how all these folks stressing the network were going to basically collapse the network. This is early on in the pandemic. Didn't really happen that way. I wonder if you could walk us through sort of some of the, I don't know if it's lessons learned or just sort of key thoughts you had as it related to how DISA handled the pandemic and this massive shift of the government to remote work.
Hey, Bo, thanks for asking that question. We went in March from about 90,000, remote workers, telework, to like 900,000 in just a couple of weeks. And it did stress the network. The goodness is, we have been posturing for some time at our headquarters and others as well to be telework ready as part of our continuity of operations plans, right? What happens when? And so what do you do, right? And so in our case, like 90% of our workforce it just already had a telework policy on file. So there was already something there, right? From a policy standpoint. And then from a technical standpoint, our circuits did get stressed, but we were already in the process of upgrading those circuits because we do a regular review and upgrade of those circuits for capacity based upon increasing demand. So we're already in the process of upgrading those circuits. So when the pandemic hit, we sent everyone home to VPN in within a short period of time around the world. Those areas that were saturated were upgraded, and we had already in place a very robust, remote access virtual private network capability at our JRSS stacks, at our security stacks, where a remote user would dial into. And it was just a matter of us expanding the capacity. The hardware was already in place. And so that became just a task. And to the outside world, you would have noticed the difference. In fact, in some cases, and I think a few folks on the call could appreciate this, productivity was as good or better working remotely than coming into the office. And we all live through this. You wake up, you go to work on your computer, you save an hour or two commuting. And so, might have been getting more work out of folks at times teleworking than we would have otherwise. There's no end of day rush to get out to hit the road to beat the traffic. They just kept working. And so the work got done. There's a missing piece, I think, to being in person. We could talk about that later if you want. But in terms of the actual productivity of the workforce, we did in our contracting arm about 50,000 contract actions the year before. And then this past year during the pandemic, we did like 57,000 contract actions. So, our ability to produce was not hindered in several of our areas. In some areas, you need classified systems, you have to come into work, don't have a choice. But in the areas that we didn't, we did well.
Yeah, I think it's I don't know how many positives are going to come out of the pandemic, but I think this may be, one of the ones. I mean, in my business, we've certainly learned how much more flexible we can be. We've also learned that some people need supervision and some people need face-to-face. But I think for the most part, particularly knowledge workers, it'll be one of the things that comes out of the pandemic that will be a success. You mentioned JADC2, and I wonder if you could dive down into that a little bit more in detail. It's obviously a critical initiative of the department, and if you could just talk more about maybe what JADC2 is, because we haven't really had a session on that yet, and then how DISA more operationally gets involved in that.
Yeah, so JADC2 is a joint staff effort, joint all-domain command and control. It's the joint version of the Army's multi-domain operations. It's a little bit of everything. And at the same, a great, eye chart of how everything is supposed to work in the future, right? If it all worked together, if it could only work together, right? The whole sensor to shooter thing, I see something, I sense it, I shoot it, and it all happens magically, right? Well, briefed really great for the first, part of that. And as the Joint Staff J6 started digging down into what is that required to make that happen, interestingly enough, it's come down to about a half a dozen foundational things that, the Joint Staff is going to start on initially, right? Set the foundation. And to me, it makes a ton of sense. One of the things is the network, the good network capacity, transport, reliability. So one of the, the MVPs, the minimum viable products that will be, worked on over the next 18, 24 months is a network piece. Another one is, hey, we need to have a cloud capability, right? Because we have data centers, but we don't have data centers everywhere you have an operation. And if you can leverage the cloud to deliver capability closer to the edge, that's what you need. And so there's a cloud MVP that they're going to work on. There's a identity, credential, and access management piece, ICAM, right? You need to be able to know who you are and to validate, it's the right shooter to be able to, have access to the right permissions, et cetera. There's a piece on coalition capability with mission partner environment or SABRE. That's another one of theirs. And there's a data piece. There's a leveraging data, right? All these things I just mentioned, all sound very similar to things, with the exception of the mission partner environment. That's an Air Force executive agent responsibility. But the others I just talked about are things that DISA is already working on, right? And the final thing is something called zero trust, which is, not to get too technical here, but we have a network that operates a certain way, and it's operated in a network fashion for the past several years, until the cloud came along. So we used to have all our data on government property in our spaces, and then once we went to the cloud a few years ago, we started to lose control to some degree of that. And so, this concept of zero trust means you verify everything, every transaction, before you actually execute. And so zero trust is one of the principles of JADC2 as well, in an area that DISA, the place I work, is also working on very aggressively, by the way.
Awesome. I know, I think I know the JAKE, the Joint AI Center, is also a part of DISA or aligned to DISA. Could you talk about your relationship there and how you see the JAKE sort of prioritizing its efforts?
Yeah. So the JAKE as an entity works directly for the DepSecDef, but is an AdCon organization to DISA. So JAKE employees are DISA employees. They get their priorities from their director in the DepSecDef, but as I said earlier, leveraging data as a center of gravity is one of our priorities. And so we are working with the JAKE and leveraging what JAKE is doing in terms of tools and platforms for us to be able to make that an important priority for us.
Thanks. We have about a minute left. When you look out into the future, say 5 years or so from now, when you're a retired guy like me, well, maybe not, but might be running DISA. Who knows?
I'm not far behind. I'm not far behind, Bo. I got like maybe 5 or 6 months left, and then I'll be wearing a different color uniform. I think
Well, when you look out, you've been at DISA now for a while, and so I think you have a really good perspective on strengths, weaknesses, like every organization has. What do you think it's going to be 5 years from now, big picture?
So, if you listen to, John Sherman's testimony, he's the designated DoD CIO pending confirmation right now. We just recently started this effort called the Fourth Estate Network Optimization, which is DISA taking on all of the common IT services of the Fourth Estate entities. The Fourth Estate entities, are, the Defense Logistics Agency, the Defense Health Agency, all the defense agencies, right? And what he said was, hey, someday in the future, one entity takes care of all of the common IT, all the services and COCOMs. That's where it's headed, standardization. Before there was a DISA, all the services did their own infrastructure, the big pipes, et cetera. And with the establishment of the Defense Communications Agency that became DISA, we all now do that for the Defense Department for the most part. It would be hard to imagine going back to before we had all that. And so the future, I think, is a gradual or maybe very deliberate, push to do even more of that so that services can focus on their core competencies, not on being IT departments. So that, I believe, is where we're headed.
Great. Well, Garret, thanks again for breaking away from what I know is always a busy day for you and educating the group here as to DISA, its priorities, how to do business with it, or how to start trying to do business with it. And we learned a lot. I learned a lot, and it's always great to see you again, my friend.
Likewise, Bo. Thanks for having me on.
Okay. Bye-bye. David, back to you guys.
Well, thank you, General. Thank you, both generals. And by the way, in 4 or 5 months, I'm going to hound you, Major General Yee. You won't get away. I want you to know that. Thank you so much for your service, and thank you for your very enlightening conversation today.
Oh, great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you both. So thank you, Major General Yee and Major General Young. We're going to take a little break here. I do want to say before we do that, that we are always looking for people to participate. So we're looking for corporations that might want to be in part of this discussion. We do these events that you may know about. We have a cybersecurity summit. We have a dual use technology summit. We have this one. We do a celebration of our military when we give awards, our 5-star award, our Magellan award, and others. We're doing smaller bespoke programs, et cetera. So if an organization is interested in being part of those, we're always looking for CEOs to speak, other leaders to speak. We're always looking for active duty flag and general officers, retired secretaries of various departments, government leaders, entrepreneurs, investors. All of those people are welcome. All of them are part of the solution to the puzzle around how to ensure the United States stays the strongest military, political, and economic power, along with its allies. And so we're looking for international input, NATO, the Five Eyes, et cetera. Please do not hesitate from calling us and letting us know that you'd like to be involved, you'd like to speak, you'd like to serve on a panel, you'd like to host or moderate a panel. So all of those possibilities exist. We're very, very inclusive. And we would love to have any and all of those people who would sort of share this same vision for the United States join us. So with that, we're going to take about a 7-minute break. We'll be back, I believe, at 12:25, and look forward to seeing you all when you get back.